My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to the first episode of 2024. I was going to say 2023. Surely. But I'm so excited. We've made it to the other side. It's a brand new year. We're still alive. We're still breathing. It's wonderful. I really hope that you're enjoying your holidays. I hope you're finding time to actually rest and breathe because these are so important. We need rest. Trust me. I was actually having a conversation with a friend earlier, and we were talking about how both our breakdowns last year were because we just weren't resting. We weren't sleeping enough. So I hope you're finding time for that. Thank you so much for rocking with this podcast and for starting your year by listening to this episode. And I truly hope it helps you because we've put in a lot of work into researching this part 1 and next week's part 2 before we get back to our African stories. First and foremost, if you are a newbie, welcome to the family. Thank you so much for joining the Legally Clueless family. Audio episodes like this go out every single Monday, and you can stream them everywhere you find podcasts on. If you're an OG member, I have got nothing but love for you. This week, I do have a song of the week. Yes, first and foremost, I've been listening to the whole album, but yeah, I want you to check out a song. I do not know what it's about. Can someone please translate this jam for me? It's by an artist. I've shared his music just a couple of weeks ago with you, but I want you to check out another song by him. I'm so in love with him. My goodness, his music, his voice, and he sings in pure French. I finally figured out that he is from Congo. His name is Yame. Oh my goodness. I really think this guy is one of the most incredible artists of our generation. Like legit. And I'm not even just like hyping. He is. So I want you to check out a song by him called Ayomba. What is it about? I have no idea. But if you hear me harmonizing to it, you'd think we co-wrote it. It is so yummy. It's such a yummy song. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Please check it out. And my goodness, if you understand what he's saying, just like sidebar us, let me know what it is he's saying on our Instagram, because yeah, I'm just singing loudly and maybe I'm insulting myself. So let's get into this episode. So I thought it would be really nice to actually give you tools that can help with setting of goals and goals across different clusters in our lives. Because I know last week the episode was on the 12 lessons I learned in 2023. Now, while that is wonderful, the team and I thought that we need to be able to give practical tools to help us as a community start living healthier lives, start creating our goals and tracking them and working towards them. It's one thing to share lessons. It's another thing to share tips that say, hey, here is step 1. You know what I mean? Like actual practical lessons. Now, this being the first episode of the year, please don't get this twisted with like resolutions. No, I have never believed in New Year's resolutions. I don't believe in how they're framed. But what I think is good is the time frame of a year. It's a good amount of time to implement things, to track your progress. We're coming from a good holiday. I'm hoping you are rested and even more than rest, I hope you have experienced moments where there's been enough silence for you to meditate and think about the changes you want to make in your life, to audit your life, and to figure out where it is you want to go. So because of how the calendar is structured, then it means the beginning of the year is a good time to come back and be like, okay, this is how we're going to regroup going forward. And so we're starting a new tradition, an episode of really giving practical tips at the beginning of every year. Now, we've separated them into 4 different clusters, but this part 1 is going to look at how to actually set goals for yourself. Like there's a science behind it. And we're also going to look at how to start changing your financial habits. How do we make those healthier? In part 2, we're going to look at how to actively start your own healing journey. Important, but also tricky. And then we're also going to look at how to have healthier relationships with yourself, with your friends, so your friendships with family, intimate relationships as well. So I think it's going to be good to start off the year with these 2 episodes and then jump right back into our African stories. So let's start off with how to actually set goals for yourself. Now, I think you know I'm a nerd. So I did a lot of reading on this. And I didn't know there's actually a goal setting theory. Isn't that wild? Like, it's science, it's science. And apparently, the goal setting theory is a motivational theory. So it explains how goals affect our behavior. And what this theory suggests is that by setting specific, challenging goals, we actually in turn increase our performance, increase our persistence, and increase our motivation. So setting goals is like a great thing for us to do. It gives us clear understanding of what is expected of us, where we're going. Now, something else that's helped me with my goals is realizing that there are 3 groups of goals, right? So there's short-term, mid-term, long-term. A long time ago, I used to group all the goals together. And honestly, a goal like, for example, building a house cannot be the same as my goal of learning how to play the drums. You know what I mean? Like, or my goal of becoming healthier or my goal of saving. You need to separate them into 3 groups. So short term takes about a few weeks, mid-term takes 1 to 3 years, and long-term goals take 3 or more years. These ones require time and perseverance, but we can do this. So the last couple of years, heavily motivated by my divorce, I had to review my goals. Things had changed and my goals were only mine. It's not a bad thing, but I realized in the process of the divorce that I had a lot of self-work to do. And so what was happening within the confines of my therapy sessions was I was actually setting personal goals while in therapy. And when I noticed that was happening, that's when I started trying to read up more on goals, because now I had to do an overhaul of my life goals. I'd had this major change in my life and I had to regroup and come back to myself and be like, okay, what's one is broken within me as a Del? So on a personal level, what do I need to fix and how do I set goals for that? Secondly, even just as finances, now, what are my financial goals as an individual? What do I want to actualize, right? What do I want my savings to look like? What do I want my investments to look like? It's like the divorce was a blessing in disguise because I managed to breathe life back into my goals. I think sometimes as women, what happens when we get married is we shelve our individual personal goals and we are so quick to start looking, especially in like heterosexual relationships, we're so quick to start looking at the man and being like, okay, what are his goals and how do I play a supporting role to his goals, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with you having your individual goals as well, because whilst there's a relationship, you're also an individual. But I hadn't done that. So it was a blessing in disguise for my goals because I could go back, regroup and be like, what type of life did I want to live? Where did I want to live? What were my goals in different clusters of my life? And in doing that, I had to read up a lot, which is why I'm able to share these things with you. And so when I was reading, I found that away from the 3 groups of goals, short-term, mid-term, long-term, there are also other clusters that help you think of your goals in a more clearer way. So for example, the first one is family and social goals. So for me, I knew under this, some of the goals I had was I needed better boundaries with my family. I needed healthier friendships. I needed to rebuild what community looks like for me, And so those goals had to be put in that cluster and then broken down into, okay, we want this goal and how are we going to achieve it? And we're going to get to the tips a little later. Then the second cluster is personal development goals. A lot of this was happening in therapy, but some of them on my list were like reducing my time on social media. So because of that goal, when I was breaking it down, I was like, okay, so what can I do instead? And I've always loved reading. And I was like, okay, let's get back to heavily reading. I wanted to learn an instrument. I wanted to learn the drums higher. That became a goal. I wanted to commit to a daily spiritual routine, speaking to my ancestors every morning at my ancestral altar, ensuring that I thank them and I ask for guidance and I make time for that. And in that moment, I ensure there are no distractions. You know, I'm not there and thinking about, hey, did I send that email? Have I bought tokens? Did the gardener come? No, be real and in that moment. So in that second cluster of personal development goals, those were some of mine. And then the third cluster is career goals. For me, it's like career and business goals. So in terms of career, last year I was like, okay, I want to capture my speaking engagements so that I can have a video bio for those. That's something that I did. I, for the business, wanted to employ and train correspondents, did it. Employ someone for admin, did it. Start using AI tools for our production processes, did it. Consistently run our group therapy sessions. I mean, we had 150 people go through our group sessions, did it. Start my second business, which I co-founded. We did all the paperwork. We're pretty close to launching. And even with my career goals, I realized like some goals were put on hold. I was just like, this is not the right time. Or I can't handle all of this at the same time, or I've just not found the right person. Some I failed to sustain altogether. Some I just like, I failed at some. And I realized in those moments, I just had to be like really graceful with myself, and be like, okay, we'll try again, or maybe this goal wasn't for me, so erase it altogether. The fourth cluster is health and well-being. Now, when it comes to my health, I didn't have any other goal than, I just want to put on weight. Okay, I had some other sub goals, but that was the main one. I was just like, wait, guys, I want to eat. I want to eat, please. Then I had my breakdown that I talked to you about in my last episode, and taking care of my physical body became a goal in October. And I remember adding it, like actually writing it down as being part of my health and well-being goals. I've added keeping all my doc appointments consistent, not only going to see the doctor when I am damn near comatose, making sure I go as consistently as possible, and so I know before the holidays, I scheduled doc appointment. I was just like, I just want to follow up, make sure everything inside is all right. I was finishing a particular medication she had put me on. And so I was just going in. I mean, I felt good. I knew everything was working, but I was like, madam, just check. I don't want to be comatose during Christmas or New Year's. No. And then I know my next one is in February. So that's already, like, I even know the week. So now the week of my doctor's office will contact me. And then based on what my work schedule looks like, I'll be able to say I'll come in Tuesday or Thursday. So that is a good example of the goal was consistently keep all my doc appointments. So one of the ways or the tools I put in to ensure that is after I leave the appointment, I pre-book the next one. Whereas it might not be realistic to book the day because of my work schedule, I can say, let's do it on this week. Yeah. And other goals have been to, my breast screening. So do my monthly breast self-exam. My doctor does my breast exams as well. Really actually understand that, especially since my mom passed away from breast cancer, I have a higher risk than the next woman, but also that I am a woman and a Black woman, a Black African woman. That means my risk is higher. So just really actualizing that. I mean, that one I think I've been good. It's not like I have a choice, but I've been good in the past, but it still remains as one of my goals. And then the other one is just to have my regular pap smears. I think, just understanding health, man, even of the physical body, very important. And then the last cluster is financial goals. So The reason I'm sharing some of my goals with you is just so that you can understand what should go into the clusters, and then to understand, by the way, we are together. We're together in maneuvering this wild thing called life. So don't be too scared to start, okay? So the last cluster, financial goals, I wanted to start saving in a money market fund. So I made sure I did that beginning of this past year. I also needed to firm up my monthly budget. I needed to save consistently. Let me tell you, like, my saving habits were those ones of like just drop lump sums. And that wasn't teaching me discipline. It wasn't teaching me consistency. It wasn't teaching me that you can drop consistently little amounts of money and it'll actually add up to a very huge amount of money. So for that one, I started doing the 52-week challenge. And this is a challenge where for 52 weeks, you deposit a particular amount of money into your savings account or your money market fund or like wherever it is you want to save. And so you can decide. So there's people who do the 52-week challenge, 100 bob edition, 200 shillings edition, etc. I do the 300 shillings edition. So what that means is my first deposit is 300 shillings. And then every week, the amount I have to deposit goes up by 300 bob. So week 1, I start with 300 shillings. Week 2, I'm actually depositing 600 shillings. It's gone up by 300 bob. Week 3, I'm depositing 900 shillings. It's gone up by 300 bob from 600. You dig? Week 4, it's 1,200 bob, then 1,500, 1,800, 2,100, 2,400, and you're depositing these amounts every week. So you can choose that you want to do the 300 one like me, or you want to do a 200 shilling one or a 100 shilling one. Some people do a 50 shilling one. Whatever your denomination is, if you're not in Kenya, you decide what is more realistic for you. Because I had a particular thing I wanted to save for, I went for the 300 bob one. It really did teach me how to save consistently, get into the habit of taking small amounts from my revenue and putting that aside consistently. I was very useless at that. In 2022, I had tried this challenge. I quit it in June. I failed in 2022, but in 2023, I have finished it. I actually made my last deposit on the week of Christmas. Isn't that wonderful? Absolutely wonderful. So yeah, that was one of my financial goals. I also had the goal of, I just needed to stop rewarding myself with new things. I was those people who, if I've had a bad day, guess what? I'm gonna buy a new dress, a new pair of earrings, a new bag. If I've had a good day, guess what? I'm gonna buy me a new dress, a new pair of earrings. Something new must come home with me, good or bad day. And whereas it seems like it's such a small, meaningless amount, so maybe you're spending 2,000 bob or 3,000 bob or 4,000 bob, well, below 5,000 bob. It's not only that if you add up all of these amounts, it's quite significant. But what was more uncomfortable for me is what it was reinforcing in my mind, that you have to spend money to reward yourself with something. And that if something has gone wrong or you've had a bad, challenging day, the only way you can feel nice is by going to spend money and buy yourself something new. Not just sitting with the feelings and like processing the feelings of sadness or anger, whatever. Because those are normal emotions. No, you run away from them by buying something. So that's really what I wanted to change with that particular goal. And imagine I'm really impressed. Obviously, actually during Christmas, I actually didn't buy myself a gift because in October when I traveled, I bought myself a new phone. So I knew that was like an early Christmas gift for myself. Yeah, so I actually didn't buy myself anything this Christmas. I only spent money on gifts for other people. And even that, I was making rational financial decisions. So yay, go me. I feel like such an adult. What? So now that I've told you the 3 groups when it comes to goals, And how many are they? Are they 5 clusters? Family and social goals, personal development goals, career goals, health and well-being ones, and financial goals. Yeah, that's 5. Now that I've told you all of that, let's talk tips, like actual practical freaking tips. And so the tips that we're going to be looking at are going to be tips on how to actually like set goals and tips on how to change your financial habits to more healthier ones. And then next week, we're going to look at tips to help you start your healing journey with yourself and tips on how you can build healthier relationships with friends, with family, and intimate ones. Cool? Yeah. So in terms of your goals, one thing that's really helped me is to break down my goals into like little chunks. So for example, like learning how to play the drums, I'm on book 1. So I knew across the year, with every lesson, I wanted to get through a certain number of pages. And then at the end of the year, I wanted to have gotten through the book. So the goal was to get through the book, but every lesson I was like, I'm going to be paying not for the 30-minute lesson, but for the 1-hour lesson so that I can get through 5 pages every lesson. So you see, that's more bite-sized, the 5 pages. And then even still with the drums, I was like, every morning, I'm going to play my drums for 10 to 20 minutes. And actually, a very seasoned musician here in Kenya, who's my friend, when I told him like, yes, I'm learning how to play the drums, I'm so excited, his advice was like, set aside time every day to play for 15 minutes. Yeah, so the bite-sized version of my goal of learning how to play the drums was like, every day, set aside 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and play. If you look at the end of a goal or like the main goal where we're going, it can be overwhelming, right? You can just be like, wow, can I really be the one to achieve this? But when you break it into little chunks, it's achievable. For example, my 52-week challenge, at the end of the year, the 300 bob version, you'll have saved just over 400,000 Kenya shillings thereabout. Now, if I looked at it as I'm trying to save 400 or 500 or 600,000 Kenya shillings, that sounds overwhelming. But then when I break it down to, okay, let's start with 300 shillings. Then I'm like, yeah, doable. Okay, let's do 600. Yeah, it's doable. So when you break them down into bite-sized chunks, it becomes more attainable and less overwhelming. Now, in terms of setting goals, I've made many mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I made was not setting realistic or achievable goals, like just being so over ambitious that it's unhealthy, like where I'm not being realistic. And that really is self-sabotage. For example, like I've never joined a gym. Mimi and the gym, we're not friends. But imagine if I sat down to start saying, I'm setting a goal that I'm going to go to the gym every morning. It might not be achievable, right? Because one, how can my first commitment be so intense? Like I can't say, oh, I'm going to be going to the gym every morning for 3 hours. Me who's never stepped in a gym. Number two, it might not be realistic based on where I live. Like, so am I saying every morning I'm going to be waking up at 5 a.m. to drive into Nairobi, get there by 6 to go to a gym? Madam, are you going to do that? Also, sometimes I'll set a goal knowing my work schedule won't allow it, and I'll still set it. And what's really happening is I'm setting myself up for failure. So please learn from me. Be very realistic with your goals. What is actually attainable and what's not. Set measurable goals. Oh, I've had very many vague goals that just never come to be, okay? Because it's impossible to track them. So they'll just remain dreams. So for instance, I want to buy land and I want to build a house. I need to decide my budget. And then I say, okay, I'm going to save across the year to attain the money I need to buy the land. That's measurable. I need to get the best deal when I'm looking for the land. So to do that, I want to ensure I view a minimum of 20 pieces of land across these 3 different counties. Measurable. Very easy to track. But if it remains vague and there's no points where we can measure, it's like, what are we doing? For example, I keep going back to the 52-week challenge because it's a very good example. I printed out the worksheet and it has like little boxes where you tick. That actual process of ticking is measuring. So I can look at it and say, oh, I haven't deposited this week. I need to deposit. So make sure the goals are measurable so that you can track. And don't be scared. Even if you get like 1 week you fall behind or 1 month you fall behind of whatever goal you're trying to achieve, you imagine you can get back on. Don't let it throw away the whole goal. You can come back. You can come back. Imagine it's not the end. The other thing is to write them down. Oh my God. If you leave your goals in your mind, they can be overwhelming. Wait until you can convince yourself you're not capable of achieving this goal. Because it's just in your head and there are all of these thoughts. It can get so overwhelming, hard to track, and hard to break down. So for me, I have always for years, like this is from maybe, I want to say 2015, I've always had a whiteboard. While I was still on radio, I had a whiteboard in my bedroom and it was super huge. And I would write down my goals and the things I wanted to create, the projects I wanted to do, even the organizations I wanted to work with. When I got married, in my home office, I still had a whiteboard. Now my office, it has a whiteboard. Even looking at it, I'm just seeing goals for a particular project I'm working on. Whenever I walk into my office, I see those goals. It keeps me knowing what I have to do. And imagine, I kid you not, like this is not me just hyping myself. Everything I write on my whiteboards comes to be. No matter how long it takes, it comes to be. There's something about writing it down that just makes everything within you in sync. And you even start to visualize this thing coming to be. So yeah, write it down. It doesn't have to be dramatic like me with like a whiteboard. There are different apps you can use on your phone. You can even just use the note app, whatever works for you, or a notebook. Just make sure you've written it down. And then this is probably the biggest tip when it comes to goal setting. Celebrate the small wins along the journey. My goodness. And by celebrate, please don't do that thing that I formerly used to do at go and buy yourself a new dress to celebrate. No, just soak in the moment. You can bake something for yourself or cook yourself like a nice dinner. Celebrate the small wins along the journey. Working towards your goals shouldn't feel like a chore. Like even saving shouldn't feel like a chore. You're doing a great thing for yourself. You're actually being courageous. You're actually trying to change your life around. Do you know how dope that is? Can we please celebrate you? So when you make progress, soak it in. And it's also important to soak in those small wins along the way because you can use them as fuel to keep you going. So celebrate. Goals shouldn't feel like chores or like, I don't want to do it. It's a great thing you're doing, very courageous thing you're doing. So the last batch of tips I have are on finances, like how to start changing your financial habits just to make them healthier, just because that's something I've been very intentional about across, I want to say even the last 3 or so years. So first and foremost, what really helped me, everything starts in the mind. Your mindset, your views on things will really dictate your behaviors and your habits. So the first thing I did that was so important was acknowledging that being good with money isn't genetic. Imagine, it's a skill that can be learned. So just because you were previously not good with money doesn't mean that's who you are. It's not genetic. This is a skill that can be learned. The second tip is I started tracking how much I spend across a week and a month. This seems very basic, but it took me a while to do this because I knew I was not making good financial decisions. So I didn't want to face that actual truth. No thanks. Ignorance is bliss. But I knew I had to do that. And I realized the process didn't shame me. I didn't feel bad about myself. I didn't feel like a lame person when it came to finances. I didn't feel irresponsible. It actually informed me on what I need to change and where, because that's the mindset I went into it with. I was just like, me, I'm not going to shame you, babe. Like, imagine you're actually writing this thing out for your betterment, and we need to see where the cracks are, and then we'll fix them. So this is dope. The other tip was to cut back on recurring, what would I call them? Like charges. So those things that you've subscribed to, especially those things that individually they seem like small amounts. Let me tell you, a few years ago, I used to be the dawn of apps, ton of apps for cutting videos on the go, creating, I don't know what graph. I had so many of them on my phone, and so many of them I was paying for, like the pro versions, but I'd use them like once. And then maybe I download this one, I start using it. Kidogo, I've read that there's a new one that's better. I download the new one, but I don't stop subscribing to the old one. So now I have two apps that are doing the same thing, really, and I'm paying for both of them. Does that make sense? Because when you total all of these amounts up, individually they seem like small amounts, but they're significant when you add them. What I've made a habit of doing is checking what apps, because mine is mainly apps and softwares, checking what apps and softwares I have subscribed to. Streaming platforms, because in my house I don't have a TV, but I'll stream Netflix, let's say on my laptop sometimes. I realized I also had Showmax, but I wasn't really using it. So I checked that subscription. Yeah, and I only kept Netflix. So even if I decide I'm dissatisfied with Netflix and I need another one, I'll unsubscribe from Netflix and bring another one. So my rule is like, you can't have two apps or softwares or platforms or whatever that you're subscribed to that are doing the same thing. How it makes sense? And you're paying for both? No, ma'am. So just check. Keep checking. It looks like I think I even remember I had another Audible subscription and I hadn't used it for months. And that one was costly. Oh my goodness. Where? The next tip is to read up on investments. I used to think investments were super overwhelming because we don't understand the jargon. And for a long time, it was for people in like the economists, the people in the financial space. The English they used was strange. And then it's money. Me, I used to fear, now my money will disappear. Then I'll be a pauper. I'll have to rely on a man. Yeah, that's my financial trauma. Talking. So I just used to like, let me say we. But I think what helped me was starting to read up about investments, reading them in a language that is palatable to me I'm not an economist, So you can use apps like Ndovu. The Ndovu co-founder has been on this podcast a couple of episodes ago. We shared the link, but if you just search NDOVU, you can find the app. Watching YouTube channels, oh my goodness. This one I have to big up someone very special in my life who shared with me YouTube channels where they were teaching us how to buy shares in companies that are in international markets, basically. And so the person was explaining it in English that made sense. But I was like, yes, yeah, I can do this thing, So once you start exposing yourself to these channels, and now we have a lot more content creators who are speaking on matters finances in very palatable languages. Once you expose yourself to these things, you start to understand better, and a lot of your fears can get squashed by information. So for me, I subscribed to quite a few YouTubers who are making financial content. So when I don't do it every day though, let me not lie. So when I'm looking, maybe I'm going to the shower and I don't listen to music, I want to hear a voice, I'll put her channel on because I'm like, okay, I'll just hear something. Even if I only pick 3 things from the video, I've picked something. The other thing is just demystify that to save or invest, you need large sums of money. That has changed. You can. So don't sit waiting for the day you'll have, I don't know how many millions. You can start now with whatever little you have. Oh, another tip is something that I did that helped me understand myself so much better. Do the questionnaires that help you understand what type of investor you are. I did mine via the Standard Chartered Bank app, but if you Google, I'm sure you can find these tools online. Once I did it, I was like, aha, mimi na pesa yangu, we don't like being parted. So I'm a very cautious investor. So things that have high risk, you will not find me there because stucky anxiety, please. So once you know the type of investor you are, you can be able to read up on what type of investments you, with your investment personality, should be looking at. And then the last tip, which is so cliche, is budget. Ooh, budgets. And then budgeting helps you I think budgeting was first introduced to us wrongly. It was introduced like it's a chore, it's exhausting, it's not fun. I feel like budgeting helps you think clearer through the month and you at all times know where you are financially. But I think one loophole back in the day I had with budgeting, not loophole, mistake. You know how you have to be realistic about your budgets? Me, at the very beginning, I don't know why I thought I can live like a pauper. I wanted to save more than what was realistic. And then because I had under budgeted, I would begin to feel bad about overspending. But I wasn't really overspending. It's because I had super under budgeted, mpaka it was not a realistic amount. So when I went back to the budget, I was just like, what was I thinking here? Of course, whatever I spend on my groceries has to go up. Of course, this other thing needs to be at this amount. Like, was I high? Oh my God. Like, surely, what was happening? So my budget just wasn't realistic at all. So make sure your budget is realistic, because once you do that, it's so comfortable. At all times of the month, you will know exactly where you are financially. It just brings a lot of ease. And in case you need to move money around, it's easy to go back to your budget and see, what can I move around? Maybe things are tight. You can go back to the budget and be like, okay, I'll do without this month. So those are the tips I have when it comes to how to actually set goals for yourself and how to start changing your financial habits to healthier ones. Part 2 will be out next week, and we're going to be looking at how to actively start your own healing journey. So tips on that and tips on how to have healthier relationships with friends, with family, and intimate ones. So then if we do this every beginning of the year, I feel like we're helping each other as a community here at Legally Clueless to evolve to our better selves, you know, the best versions of ourselves at all time. So we'll catch up next week for part 2. If you are in Kenya, remember, you can catch us. I don't know why I'm swallowing my words. What's happening? Remember, you can catch us on Trace FM every Monday and Wednesday at 1 p.m. and 11 p.m. and every Friday at 1 p.m. Just go to traceradio.co.ke to stream. I'm going to catch you in next week's episode. I'm sending you so much love and just good vibes. It's a new year. Yes, we got this. We are definitely going to work towards being our best selves this year. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.